So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Clean Energy Challenge. As we have registered some 900 guests for today's event, it also just demonstrates how important this issue is, not only as a means to provide energy to a very vulnerable population, but a means to provide dignity. And when I think of populations around the world which have been displaced, the least which we can do is provide them with the very basics. And energy is now a basic need for all populations. So we have an obligation to do whatever we can to achieve that goal, which is to provide renewable, sustainable energy to all refugee populations by 2030. But we need your help to do that. Today's event is being co-hosted by GPA and UNITAR. The run of the show for today will be consisting of two panels. The first panel, which will spotlight on what currently is happening around the world since the Clean Energy Challenge started. And the second panel will look at concrete projects and opportunities, because we really have to hasten the level of implementation around the world, because people are relying on us to move from talking to impact. To achieve that impact, we've got a great range of partners, not only from governments and NGOs, but most importantly, communities on the ground. Also the private sector. We've got Schneider Electric, we've got the IKEA Foundation, we've got governments which have contributed, such as Ethiopia, Norway, the US, Germany, France, and Sweden. And soon after the High Commissioner's Grandy's opening remarks, we'd also like to hear from Hao-Young Su, the UNDP Assistant Director. So we've got a very interesting, energetic lineup, which we're about to move on from. And from this point on, I'd like to pass over to my boss, the High Commissioner for Refugees, Sylvia Grandy. Up to you.
Thank you, Andrew. I think defining this meeting, this group of speakers and interlocutors, energetic is the right word. So we'll try to live up to the word. And thank you very much. I know there's many people online, and thank you very much for coming to this very important meeting. A very important meeting on an important subject that occurs in what I will say something very obvious, in a very difficult world, and not just for us at UNHCR, but in general. A world that, in addition to all the challenges that we are used somehow, sadly, to have to deal with, is now submerged by the pandemic and all its consequences. Of course, talking about a difficult world, maybe just a few introductory remarks on how this is difficult, how this world is difficult from the perspective of UNHCR. We deal, as you all know, with refugees, with internally displaced people, with people that sometimes go back home, unfortunately not very often, with other people that are forcibly displaced from their homes or from their countries by conflict, by discrimination, violence, persecution, in an increasingly complex set of causes that certainly include also the climate dimension. The climate emergency that, as we all know, also has a role in causing the displacement, the forced displacement of people. A few words on that, perhaps, because I think it is important. There are many situations in which climate-related displacement, environment-related displacement is obvious. Situations in which nature is offended or angry and causes people to move. Look at what is happening as we speak in Eastern Congo with the eruption of the Nyiragongo volcano. But look also at a long series of hurricanes, of floods, of droughts. And then, of course, the climate emergency more and more intersects with other displacement factors: conflict, poverty, underdevelopment, weak or let's call a spade, bad government, bad governance, even pandemics. And in many of these situations, resources that are often made scarce or more scarce by the climate emergency become a trigger for many of these other phenomena. And look at the Sahel, where most of these triggers are present, and where in the last, 2-3 years, over 3 million people have been either internally displaced or have crossed borders into neighboring countries. But you know, this combination is not just in the Sahel, that is the region that always comes to mind, but we observe it with variations in Central America, for example. We observe it in northern Mozambique, in the Horn of Africa, and so forth. But the climate emergency is not only, the climate link with displacement is not only in the climate emergency being a cause for displacement, because there is also a link in the impact that displacement has on nature, or that nature has on those displaced. Most displacement, as we all know, occurs in countries or regions that are fragile from the climatic point of view. And it is our estimate that 90% of those forcibly displaced have limited access to modern, reliable, and clean sources of energy. And this applies not only to those that are displaced, but very often to those that host them. And in these situations that have been going on for quite some time, unfortunately, giving access rather to sustainable energy has always been a bit of a footnote or an afterthought. This is what we need to change, and this is why we have this meeting. I can give you very quickly a few examples. Think of what it means for people that are displaced, people in vulnerable situations, to study without having electricity, without having light, or running a business, or trying to establish even a small business without access to energy. Think what it means, this is a traditional example, to cook without safe fuel. Think what it means for women to go and collect firewood in situations where there's no other source of energy, in areas where by doing this they can be exposed to harassment, sexual violence, and even worse. This is why I think that for us at UNHCR, the Refugee Protection Organization, providing safe energy, sustainable energy, is actually an act of protection. Another aspect that I think is important to flag is that displacement itself has an impact on nature. Think of the forests that are being cut down by huge groups of displaced people in Bangladesh, in Uganda, and other places. Think of the unregulated expansion of urban centers that occurs in situation of large internal displacement, like Afghanistan or Colombia. Think what it means for big settlements being created by forced displacement in areas that are very scarce in water. We also need to mitigate that impact, and this is another growing priority for UNHCR. And since this for us is a priority now, as Andrew said in his opening, we cannot do this alone. We don't have, we are aware of the problem, we have the data, the field presence, the contacts, but we need resources and expertise. These, I would say, are the main thing that we need to do. This is why, if you recall, many of you who follow our work, when we worked on the Global Compact on Refugees, we put all these aspects as a key direction to work on as we collectivize our responses to forced displacement. And the The Global Compact on Refugees not only includes language on these issues, but is also based on a fundamental partnership model, and a very broad partnership model, not just governments and international organizations and some NGOs, but civil society, academia, the business sector. This is really the strength of the compact, and this is why, and in these areas, in this line of action, provision of energy, mitigation of impact on nature, of displacement movement, we need to work with all these partners. And this is why, when a year after the establishment of the compact in December 2019, just before the pandemic, we organized the Global Refugee Forum. Within that forum, we launched the so-called Clean Energy Challenge. The main purpose of which is, of course, to bring clean energy to refugee context, host communities, refugee camps, refugee settlements, areas of cities that may be inhabited by refugees. And we fixed a rather ambitious target to do that by 2030. But another purpose of launching that challenge was also to create around that challenge a community. I think the language that is used is community of practice, a community of states, organizations, private sector organizations, civil society, to work together along those lines. 88 pledges were made or have been made since then. I understand that 165 partners have joined the challenge. I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud of the work that my colleagues, led by Andrew, have done in this field, because it is one of our most important achievements related to the compact and related to the forum. It is now very important to continue that, and this is why we had this meeting, to somehow take stock of what has been done, but also look ahead and renew these pledges and maybe have further pledges. You know, just for everybody's information, in December, we will have what we call a high-level officials meeting. This is where we will take stock of the pledges made at the Global Refugee Forum. And then in 2023, there will be another refugee forum. This is already a few years into the path towards 2030. So I really hope that by then we can give some concrete example of where things have changed. So I'll stop here. I really want to thank all those who have contributed to putting together this event. I look forward to great results, great outcomes. And if you allow me, I'll stop here, and I'll give now the floor to my good friend Hao Liang-Su from UNDP, that will give you their perspective from a development organization. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner Grandi. Thank you very much, Andrew, for hosting the event and for inviting UNDP to speak. On behalf of the UNDP administrator, who unfortunately is tied up in another meeting. So let me just say a few words, very quickly. First, at the UNDP, we are keenly aware that access to clean energy is a key development issue. We simply cannot achieve the sustainable development goals without achieving universal access to clean energy. And we know that achieving sustainable energy for all is critical to spur inclusive growth and human development that leaves no one behind. Yet, we are very far from the mark. It's unacceptable that nearly 800 million people still lack access to electricity and the opportunities it brings. And 2.8 billion people don't have access to clean technologies and the fuels for cooking. So the lack of access to clean energy is a crisis and the one that affects the most of the world's most vulnerable communities, such as internally displaced people and the refugees the High Commissioner was talking about. For these communities, the situation is particularly urgent. The High Commissioner noted already that those displaced, more than 90% have very limited or no access to modern, reliable, and clean sources of energy. And the situation is unfortunately very similar in host communities in these fragile areas. Yet clean energy technologies can provide cost-effective and reliable solutions for energy access in such communities. This shows how closely connected the humanitarian and the development space are, and how energy can be the golden bridge between the two. UNDP and many other development actors are supporting this on various levels. For example, UNDP is a long-standing partner and one of the founding members of the GPA, the Global Platform for Energy in Displacement Settings. Energy in fragile settings is a strategic priority, and we implement various innovative projects with governments and partners on the ground. In Yemen, for example, with our support, a group of 10 women living in the conflict-affected areas of Abs have opened the country's first privately owned solar microgrid, pushing gender boundaries and earning an income and inspiring many other men and women in the region while bringing clean energy to their communities. However, I believe the development actors that have expertise in energy and livelihoods can do more, and we should increase our efforts to support the humanitarian sector in this. We needed to integrate refugees and other displaced people in national energy and development plans in order to achieve SDG 7 and make sure we do not leave anyone behind, especially the most vulnerable. So this leads me to speak very quickly about this year's opportunity to do so. For the first time in 40 years, the entire UN system is mobilizing ambition and action across governments, businesses, and civil society to truly accelerate progress on Sustainable Development Goal 7, which is access to clean, affordable, and reliable energy, and the energy transition. This is a recognition of the urgency of the situation. So I urge all of you and all of us today to join the high-level dialogue on energy by committing to an energy compact, a voluntary commitment every stakeholder can make in support of scaling up clean energy. At the end of this month, from 21 to 25 June, the dialogue's ministerial forums will further mobilize countries in support of ambition and ambitious action for clean energy. So join us. We're ready to support turning your ambition into concrete actions for the benefit of the displaced people and their host communities. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Assistant Administrator. We're going to go on to a video, but I think what was so important then by having our key partner from UNDP on board is that it's so much more than just a humanitarian response. It's so much more about than just simply protecting people with tents and water and food. We've now got to be looking about providing dignity, empowering populations, giving people a sense of a future, giving communities a sense of a future, and so that they can contribute to the nations that have been providing with such generous protection. So on that note, and thank you again all our partners, we'd just like to go to a short video, again, to really underline what action means. Thanks for that. And so now I'd just like to introduce Femi Oki, who will be moderating the next two panels. Over to you, Femi.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Assistant Secretary General. Thank you, High Commissioner. Thank you, everybody who is watching today. Do appreciate your time. We are going to be talking about clean and safe energy in refugee settings. Two big, important conversations I'm about to moderate. And I'm really pleased to be able to do this for two reasons. More than 20 years ago, I started CNN's World Weather Center. And at that point, so back at the very end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, we were talking about climate change, but nobody was paying any attention. This is before the MDGs, before the SDGs. Nobody was on board. So there were these meteorologists, these scientists screaming out into the void, no one paying attention. Second thing, I'm really pleased to be here with you today is because as a journalist, I've been for many years talking with refugees, sharing their stories. So the Clean Energy Challenge, what that represents to me is an ability to change the lives of the 80 million people around the world who are currently displaced. It will not be on your evening news. It will not be on the headlines everywhere. But what it will do is potentially change people. Number one, first thing we're going to do is, where are we now? Current state of play in energy and displacement. You are going to like this panel. I'm going to say hello to them, and they are each going to introduce themselves to you so they can frame themselves. So we have Joël Hangi, we have Robert Kasande, Hans Das, and Mansour Hamayoun. First of all, Joël Hangi, please hello, introduce yourself to our global viewers.
Thank you so much, Femi. My name is Joël Hangi, originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo and a refugee based in Kenya, currently precisely in Kakuma refugee camp. I'm so passionate about clean energy for all, and I'm so delighted to be part of this conversation today. Thank you.
We are delighted to have you. More from Joël in just a moment, but first, hello, Robert Kasande. Nice to see you, Robert. Tell us what you do. It's a pretty important job. Go ahead.
My name is Robert Kasande. I'm the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in Uganda. It's a ministry that is responsible for energy and mineral resources, including oil and gas. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Hans Das, introduce yourself to the audience.
Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you, Femi. I'm the Director for Emergency Management in DG ECHO, European Commission, and it's a great pleasure to be here for this exciting event. And I tell you why in one sentence. In the Green Deal, the EU has committed to be climate neutral by 2050. And that means that we're looking at all sectors to see what can be improved and what can be further greened, including humanitarian aid and civil protection. So we're very pleased with this opportunity to zoom in further on clean and safe energy in refugee settings. Thank you.
Very good to have you. You're seeing right now on your screen the screenshot of our panelists. They are very attractive panelists, smart and beautiful inside and outside. Panelists, do turn on your cameras so everybody knows that I wasn't exaggerating when I was saying that. One more person to say hello to introduce himself. Mansour Hamayoun, good to see you. Turn your camera on. Mansour, introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you so much. My name is Mansour Hamayoun. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Bbox, a company that exists to end energy poverty. So far, we've electrified nearly 2 million people in 12 countries in Africa, and a few of them in refugee camps and displaced population. I'm really looking forward to this conversation here today.
So sometimes when you work in a certain field, there are puns that are just ready to be there, to delivered, and I'm hoping that you will also electrify our conversation. Mansour is going to groan, but be very gracious because I just did a very, very bad joke. Joël, this is so great to have you, and I'm going to tell our audience why. It's so perfect because in 2019, you were at the Global Refugee Forum. So you can see how far we've gone with this clean energy challenge. Second, SDG number 7 is your best friend. I have a feeling for SDG 7, you click on it and you see Joël's face. Joël, just remind the audience who may not know, although this is about clean energy and sustainable and safe energy, I have a pretty good idea that everybody knows SDG 7. Any newcomers, SDG 7, Joelle, what is that SDG?
Access to clean energy for all.
Fantastic. And the third reason that we wanted you to start our conversation, Joelle, is because you were a refugee. And always when we talk about what is important, it has to be nothing about us without us. So we cannot have this conversation without the experience, the knowledge and the insights of somebody who has lived the refugee life. Joelle, we're going to show a picture of Kakuma camp, which is in Kenya. Can you tell us about the importance of energy when you lived in Kakuma? Can you make that connection for us, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Femi. Maybe to go a little bit back from where I'm coming from, I said I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the journey from my home country to Kenya, it has never been easy. And this is my life experience that took me so many years to understand and accept. I remember at the age of 20, finding myself alone in this place, Kakuma. The first feeling that I had, actually, I had hope seeing people living there, but I couldn't see anything practical that could transform my past nightmare of my life into, something practical that can, lead me to a success in my life. And the turning point in my life is when I accepted, my past experience, my past life, and decided to change that inner pain that I had into, a strength, into an instrument that drives me and makes me who I am today. And I'm so proud of myself. Let me just say that. But,
and we're proud of you too.
Thank you so much.
I share your pride. We're sharing pride all over the place. So let's be very specific here, Joelle. That connection. We're looking at Kakuma camp right now, and it doesn't look like there's an awful lot of clean energy, sustainable energy going on, but that's just from a picture. Reality down on the ground. What can you share with us?
Basically, the reality of that place is that there are opportunities who are offered to refugees and young people. But honestly, it's really hard for people to grab those opportunities because of the lack of energy and as well as connectivity. And coming to my case, I remember when I decided to transform my story and the story of my life. And that was marked by when I got a scholarship from JWL. And it's something that helps me a lot to drive, to start now the journey of my new life. And I went through the program, it's a remote learning program for 3 years. And after that, I got another scholarship immediately from Southern New Hampshire University, where I was pursuing my bachelor degree in business communication. And I succeed to finish the program last year. And I'm currently holding a bachelor degree in business communication. And as good as this short story might sound to you, Femi, and everyone here, honestly, it has never been an easy journey for me and for other fellow, colleagues, because I can remember having countless sleepless nights after working on an assignment for many hours on a deadline. At the middle of the night, you're waiting for the lights to just pop up so that you can submit your assignment, and you can't do that. There is no connectivity, there is no energy. And I remember I was to the point of giving up on my scholarship, and I've witnessed some of my colleagues dropping out of the program because they couldn't bear that, they couldn't continue supporting themselves, and it was very hard. And along from that, as a young lady, as a young woman, I was also witnessing some, and I'm still witnessing some of the incidents that happens within the community, because women are the most actually, affected by the fact that there is no reliable source of energy for lighting, for cooking, and they have to look for other alternatives to respond to some of their basic needs. And trust me, people are giving up on their dreams, on their future, just to respond to some of their basic need, their current need, and support their families. And finding myself today and who I am today, and after pursuing my studies, and based currently in Nairobi, I'm like, I'm really looking for a stable state, as a stable way that I can support my fellow refugees, like in a way that I can still amplify my voice and bring, let people understand what it is to be a refugee and what is the cost. At some point, people might think it's just statistic, it's just stories, but I'm here today talking to you, and you can, at least I'm one of the results why energy is really important for refugees.
The potential.
I can stand and talk to you because
the
of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
What is possible with energy?
Exactly.
Right?
And
education.
Exactly.
Achievement. Sure. All right, Joelle, you hammered that point home so beautifully. Stand by, I'll come back to you. But I want to talk to Permanent Secretary Robert Kasande from Uganda. In Africa, Uganda is the biggest host of refugees and one of the biggest hosts for refugees globally. Uganda, Robert, has a new energy plan that includes the refugees that are in your care. Tell us about the energy plan and why it was important that refugees were also included in it.
Thank you very much, Femi, the High Commissioner, Secretary General, all protocol observed. Personally, I'm a very strong believer that energy is both a necessity and a human right. It's a driver of industry.
Permanent Secretary, this is so important. I'm going to ask you just to move your camera down a little bit so we see your head. Fantastic. There you go. Yes, that face needs to be broadcast. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, once again, I'm a very strong believer that energy is both a necessity and a human right. It drives industrial development and general economic growth. And with that in mind, my country has commenced on a 5-year plan called the National Development Plan. And this recognizes access to reliable energy supply is a critical issue for economic growth, poverty eradication, leading to social and cultural transformation of our society. Also, universal access to sustainable energy raises the promotes industry, improves public services, and supports communities in economic and social development, including protection of the environment. We all know that this speaks to SDG 7 that Femi, you talked about earlier. And in that regard, we have commenced working on a sustainable response plan, energy response plan that includes availing power to our communities that are hosting refugees themselves. But before I get there, I want to take you back a little. In December 2019, during the first Global Refugee Forum, the government of Uganda committed to promote inclusive and sustainable management of natural resources and ecosystems. This further triggered advancement of inclusion of refugees into national planning and provision of services, and to maintain the government's progressive open door refugee policy. Today, 2.5 years later, after the Global Refugee Forum, the government of Uganda is continuing to lead efforts in implementing the Global Compact on refugees. We have included refugees in our National Development Plan 3, and ministries are leading comprehensive response plans for education, health, jobs and livelihoods, and water and environment. As you may understand, energy impacts both sectors, while it also promotes local, industrial, and entrepreneurship. It's also important to note that the issues of energy access for the refugee populations in Uganda mirror those of local host communities. And colleagues, will be very important to create solutions which address the needs of all populations, and to create separate or and not to create separate or parallel solutions for each of the communities. The key issues include insufficient access to affordable, clean energy for the needs of households, productive use, and social institutions for refugees and their host communities. The other issue is over-reliance on biomass for cooking in efficient methods, combined with low access to alternative, sustainable, alternative cooking fuels or efficient cooking technologies. Sadly, though, that statistically in Uganda, about 8% of the energy used for cooking is all biomass, and that has had a toll on our very pristine environment, and we need to do something about it. Thus, there has been environmental degradation due to continued use of these unsustainable energy sources of biomass. The other issue is security, safety, and health risks that are associated to the use of this biomass, particularly for women and children. Unreliable supply and inefficient utilization of energy is the other issue. There is insufficient public awareness of benefits of clean and renewable energies. There is low levels of resources directed to address these energy issues. And there is also very limited data on existing energy access levels and outcomes of energy programs. We need to be planning better. Is inadequate planning, expertise, coordination, and resource management. We face inflexible budget cycles and programs are reviewed. There's lack of dedicated energy personnel to design, coordinate, and implement plans and interventions at district and central level. There is poor coordination of intra and inter-sectoral planning. We need to have better engagement and participation of both private sector and local communities in planning and delivering energy solutions. Therefore, to address these issues, the government of Uganda, through my ministry, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, with support from humanitarian and development partners, we have developed a sustainable energy program, resources program, which has the overall objective that refugees and host communities attain universal access to affordable, reliable, and clean energy for socio-economic transformation in an environmentally sustainable manner. We will largely achieve this once it is implemented through a two-pronged approach. One is development of sustainable and effective energy solutions that lead directly to increased access to clean, affordable, and reliable energy for refugee and host communities. And two, to enhance capacity, mobilize resources, and strengthen systems for effective coordination and management of energy programs targeting refugees and their host communities in line with national and multi-sectoral policies, strategies, and plans. Dear colleagues, this event could not have come at a better time, as we are in the process of finalizing the costing of the Sustainable Energy Response Plan for and host communities. Energy demand is expected to be reduced through efficient technologies and the supply, distribution, and adoption of alternative cooking fuels. At the same time, we will improve sustainable access to energy for cooking, lighting, and productive use for households, small and medium enterprises, and institutions. This will be done through market-based approaches that involve the private sector in the establishment of delivery chains for quality energy products and by raising awareness among refugees and hosts. But what does this really mean to all the host communities and the refugees? I am particularly sure that any of you has visited Uganda before and has admired the beauty of the landscape and the scenery, you'll also agree that there is environmental degradation that is going on, particularly due to use of wood biomass for cooking. This is not different for refugees, where over 96% of households are using wood-based fuel for cooking. This has significantly contributed to the reduction in forest cover. It is therefore very critical that we support the use of clean cooking alternatives, which is one of the priorities of the Sustainable Energy Response Plan. We are already seeing some more initiatives across refugee hosting areas which have potential for upscaling with some innovative financing and increased cooperation and coordination between humanitarian and development partners. A good example of how comprehensive approach and increased cooperation between humanitarian and development actors that benefit refugees and host communities can be found in a district in Uganda, the Yumbe district that is bordering South Sudan. If you are driving through this district, you would see that hundreds of electric poles and cables, evidence of a project that is already underway to connect the refugee hosting areas to the national grid. When this electric grid goes live, the UNHCR is planning to support last mile connections for schools, healthcare centers, and markets.
Permanent Secretary, that is such a great place to end our conversation for now, with an example of how we see clean energy, sustainable energy in a refugee setting. Thank you so much for your contribution. While you were speaking, we were looking at a picture of cooking in Uganda with a solar panel. So that is what you were looking at. Permanent Secretary, we really thank you for your contribution. I need to share the time with your co-panelists, so I will move on to Hans Das. Hans, often people always say with a positive nature and sometimes a rueful nature, well, we have to remember the donors, right? There's a good side and there's a dark side of the donors. You're bringing us the great side of the donors. I am curious, Hans, about the humanitarian organizations right now who are so into the idea of sustainability, green energy, clean energy. Why do you think that is, Hans?
Thank you so much, Femi. And these, by the way, these were some very powerful interventions already, and I'm very happy to try and add the donor perspective to it. You're entirely right, Femi. I mean, these issues are not entirely new to us. We have been funding solar water pumping for many years in many different places around the globe. We also funded the large-scale distribution of liquefied petroleum gas in Cox's Bazar, just to give a few examples of things that have been going on. But what is new today, I think, is a real sense of urgency, a realization that action needs to be taken now. We cannot wait any longer. And that is for a number of reasons. First of all, we are in 2021. The Sustainable Development Goals are meant to be met in less than 9 years. So the clock is ticking, and that includes SDG 7 on affordable and clean energy for all. So bottom line, we need to scale up, we need to speed up, and we need to do it quickly. Our commitment at the European Commission's Humanitarian Aid Department was certainly very much inspired by the European Green Deal, as I mentioned earlier, which is this big plan and big commitment from the EU to be climate neutral by 2050. And in line with that Green Deal, we have adopted also a firm approach to try and reduce the environmental impact of humanitarian aid. And in doing that, we're giving a renewed focus to working on clean energy issues in displacement settings. I want to emphasize from the start that at the same time, the future programming of development and international cooperation also has this increased emphasis on climate and environmental objectives, and we need to bring these two, humanitarian and development, together. Why does it matter? I think we heard it already, but let me just try and approach it from our sort of angle. first of all, the carbon footprint of humanitarian aid is probably relatively small compared to many other large emitters. But even if that is the case, we do have a responsibility to do no harm, including for the environment. By delivering aid, we must not deteriorate the environment people live in and on which they rely for their livelihoods and well-being. And the truth is that providing clean energy solutions to people in need, in fact, meets many objectives going far beyond environmental objectives. 789 million people worldwide still have no access to electricity, and some 2.8 billion individuals have no access to clean cooking. And amongst them are obviously refugees and other displaced people, often the world's most vulnerable populations. And these facts hinder the delivery of even the most basic services. And let's face it, they are a barrier to the realization of human dignity. Wide-scale energy for the displaced must therefore become a core part of our commitment to leaving no one behind. Personal security, autonomy, employment, education, livelihoods, and not in the least individual health are all things that can be improved with the provision of clean and affordable energy. And if the technology is working well, then you might be seeing a picture on the screen that we think is a nice example of what we're talking about. This is a solar phone shop in Tanzania, where it's sort of a solution that not only means that people can make a living out of charging others' phones, creative, useful, but also shows that this access to electricity can have a ripple effect for others who can now take part in business life, can have mobile payments, etc., etc. And these are the sort of innovations that we need more and that we need to support as donor community. In that sense, we're also meeting the Global Compact and Global Refugee Forum commitments to close the technology gap and scale up capacity development for smart, affordable, and appropriate technologies and renewable energy in developing developing and least developed refugee hosting countries. Let me just finish by one very simple final element, and that is that clean energy has never been more affordable as it is now. So we might actually be able to save some money on our traditional operations if we really continuously and substantially invest in developing this area further, which will allow us to direct more resources to those in need. And isn't that exactly what the donor community should be mainly interested in? Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. We are going to continue with that innovative thinking with Mansour. Mansour's company, Bbox, is an innovative energy company that works in humanitarian situations. As I said with Hans, there is an image about donors. There's also an image about the private sector. You have so much money, but also you don't want to get involved in anything unless you're going to make money. That is not necessarily a bad thing. Mansour, what I really would love to hear from you is the opportunities for private companies to get involved in this clean energy challenge. What are you doing in Bbox? What can other private companies be doing? Mansour.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And as my previous panelists have alluded to, the fact that in 2021 that so many people around the world don't have access to any electricity whatsoever is completely unacceptable. And I think we all agree that electricity is sort of fundamental to ensuring an acceptable quality of life. And what maybe is even more unacceptable is that 1 in 100 people are displaced around the world. That's the refugee sort of percentage around the world. And those people that are under care from some of the largest organizations and nations and support don't even have access to that electricity as well. And at the same time, many of these refugee camps are large users of diesel. and other fuel types to be able to actually power their environment as well. So that's the context that we are trying to change. And I think this challenge is a very interesting transition. Like you have to identify a problem and then transition, right? And I think that just to add to the unacceptability part is that from lack of sources of clean cooking, 4 million people, according to the WHO, die annually. I mean, that's more than the COVID global death to date, right? So it's a huge problem, underreported, and people don't understand the urgency of it. And let's be honest, why? Because people then make, people like us, all of us, right, in today, are not suffering from those problems anymore on a daily basis. So we're talking about them and us. And that translating down to the urgency of solutions doesn't take place often as quickly as possible. So at Bbox, what we've been trying to do over the course of many years is we've been running a business where we install solar panels and batteries at households. We provide them with financing. We provide customers with financing. People use mobile money. When they pay us using mobile money, the system turns on. When they don't pay us, it turns off. And we were lucky enough to do that, to do new installations 500 times per day. So 500 new buildings that get installed on a daily basis. And my interest in this sector is just the sheer market size. If 1 in 100 people around the world are living in displaced settings, right, that's a huge market size. And if those 1 in 100 people are represented by organizations like UNHCR and other organizations, that's a huge channel partner for us to be able to actually work through, to be able to actually provide solutions, right? So that's the theory. And in the practice here is that it's a very complex problem, right? So I don't want to sort of undermine the complexity of the issue as well. The honest truth is that in our experience, we're lucky enough to have done some work in Kakuma refugee camp as well. We have a shop there where we work with the local population, both the host community and the refugee community, providing electricity and employment to that area as well. But there are different degrees of urgencies. In some settings, electricity is not the top need, right? In other areas where it becomes, frankly speaking, a part of society, and these communities become long-term communities, then of course infrastructure becomes very important. Then on the opportunity side as well is the data, right? So one of the interesting things that are happening in companies like Bbox, so digitalization of distributed assets, is that we're collecting a lot of data, consumption patterns, current voltage, because we have the IoT ability. We're collecting payment data in terms of how are people paying. That is giving us a lot of insight in terms of creditworthiness. And that creditworthiness, once we have that identity, plus we have the creditworthiness, it allows us to do many other value-added services as well. And that, I think, is a big opportunity of to really try to unlock the potential many of displaced population around the world have to achieving things, to be able to get educational loans, to be able to get other things, to actually show that. Last challenge I would just put in, and I'll leave time for other panelists as well, sure. is that depending on the geography, and I won't name geographies because we've been working in quite a few places, there's a very big tension between the host community and the local community, especially when it comes to the benefits that are provided. So it's impossible in some places just to look at it as on the refugee camp. We have to look at it as the community as a whole. And the community as a whole thinking, from a business perspective, sometimes gets quite tricky.
All right, so Mansour, Hans, Robert, and Joël, I am going to give you a 30-second challenge, and I am going to be so strict. All right, the 30-second challenge is, what is your call to action? And that will wrap up our conversation as far as where are we now with energy in displacement. Mansour, you go first. Mansour was like, oh, I'm going to be last, but no, you are first. Go ahead.
Our challenge is, let's stick to SDG 7. Let's make sure every displaced population, person in the world is fully energy transitioned and has full energy access by 2030. Let's fulfill that commitment.
Robert, 30 seconds. Call to action.
Energy response has about $300 million. We would appeal to everybody who would support us to provide funding that can continue the good plans that the government of Uganda has for our refugees.
Aha.
It's very critical we have these resources.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Using his 30 seconds to make an appeal for Uganda's hosting the biggest refugee settlements in the whole of the African continent. Hans, your call to action in 30 seconds would be what?
I will actually give you two, if that's all right. First of all, none of us can do this alone. We need coordinated approaches, bringing all sectors of society together. And secondly, we need innovation, innovation in how we do it, and innovation in funding, working with the private sector, trying to use the public funding to leverage private sector involvement into all of this. And then I think we'll be on a good track to get this done in time to meet the challenge. Thank you.
Thanks, Hans. Joelle, you have 30 seconds. Use it well.
So much. My call to action actually is to call everyone who is, willing and in a good position to support the energy projects and those who are providing energy to those who are in displacement settings to come and also consider refugees as part of the solution, because we have resources and knowledge, and if once we are given the opportunity, we can also sustain and grow the projects, not just for us but for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Joelle, Robert, Hans, Mansour. We really appreciate you. At this point in the program, if we were all in real life, you would be shaking hands, taking pictures, exchanging business cards. Then we would be of panelists, but because we're in the virtual world, we are going to take a short break between one panel and the next panel. We will be right back to talk about the practicalities and best practices of clean energy in refugee situations. See you in 2 minutes. Welcome back. We are talking about clean and safe energy in refugee situations, talking about the clean energy challenge. And part 2 of our conversation is going to be looking at best practices and also give you real world examples. We're going to go from local to national to global. So by the end of this session, you will be ready to do exactly the same thing. I come bearing fantastic speakers: Thomas Fogroup, Cecilia Ragazzi, Alexander Huck, and Irene Sun. They are your panelists. I'm going to get all of them to introduce themselves, tell them why they're important to this conversation in particular. Thomas, welcome. Introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Femi. Thanks a lot. My name is Thomas Fogroup. I'm heading the GPA coordination unit, and also I'm the co-chair together with Jaime de Bourbon de Parma from UNACEA for the Clean Energy Challenge. Thank you. Over to you.
Good to have you. Cecilia, introduce yourself to our global audience.
Hello, hi everybody. My name is Cecilia Ragazzi, and I'm Energy Access Lead at Mercy Corps, which is a leading international non-governmental organization operating in more than 40 countries around the world. It's a pleasure being here.
So good to have you. Hello, Alexander. Why are you on this panel? Why are you important? Impress our audience.
Lead Energizing Development, which is a global program basically supporting energy access, mostly predominantly in Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm here today to share some insights with you on how we are trying to push for more energy access, predominantly in refugee areas in Africa. So looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, likewise. And Irene, welcome to the conversation. Introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, thank you. My name is Irene Sun. I lead the team working on innovative financing at UNHCR.
Let's thank you, Irene. Let's go back to Thomas here. Thomas, I am really interested in this clean energy challenge and where we are right now? Because you and the UNHCR are their co-leads on this project. How is it going?
Yeah, back in 2018, when we developed and created the GPA, this global platform for everyone who is interested in this space, in this topic, in this SDG 7 for displaced people, we created this as an umbrella organization, operated, driven by the key humanitarian partners like UN, large NGOs, and the development partners like GSF, for example. And but what was missing was really the other actors, which were alluded also by the High Commissioner in his opening remarks, like academia, the private sector, and even more important, the member states of the United Nations, host governments, as well as donor countries. And that is where the CEC, the Clean Energy Challenge, came in. It is a campaign, it is a tool for more engagement and for more actions on in our journey to achieve SDG 7. So we are operating 3 work streams under the Clean Energy Challenge. One is data, one is innovative finance, and one is a project pipeline. And I want to give you some quick examples what we're actually doing here very concretely. On terms of data, for example, we've developed together with many other partners like the World Bank and in a larger and longer consultation process, a common set of indicators. So in the future, energy programs or energy partners who want to develop energy projects don't have to invent any indicators anymore. They can pick and choose the indicators they need for their specific programs. And this would be in line with the overarching indicators that are collected for SDG 7 monitoring. So for the first time, we can actually monitor on a global level the process and the progress of SDG 7 in displacement settings. On the second point on project pipeline, yeah, I mean, we started a year and a half ago, and back then nobody has heard of Corona. And unfortunately, a couple of months later, after we established the Clean Energy Challenge officially, the virus hit the whole globe. And as a first step and reaction from our side, we developed a marketplace. So we offered a platform for innovative projects to pitch their ideas to a larger audience, to get additional support. And especially around, for example, cleaning and greening health situations. And we will hear from Cecilia and Alex later on a couple of ideas of these innovative projects. And on the third work stream, innovative finance, honestly, one of our key topics really for the last year and a half was developing a legal and financial framework to replace diesel-powered infrastructure in displacement settings. And we've heard it a couple of times now already. The UN is running a massive amount of diesel generators, and it's about to change this. And we will hear basically also from Irene how UNHCR used this and how UNHCR is doing it within their own organization. So back to you, Femi.
Thank you, Thomas. Cecilia is from Mercy Corps. Cecilia, I said at the beginning, we're going to go from local to national to global. I'm going to do a quick fire at you. So I know you're ready for this, because there are a couple of things I wanted to hear straight away. One of them, projects on the go right now. What would you tell us?
All right, so I can just speak about one of the main projects we're implementing right now. And again, it wasn't prepared, but it goes back to Bidibidi in Uganda, where of course we just heard the representative for the Ministry of Energy speaking about it. So in Uganda, there's this refugee settlement called Bidibidi, hosts 270,000 people, so a quite sizable city, right? 93% of them are still relying on biomass for the daily cooking needs, and I rely on 3 stones fires, so quite rudimental technologies. Mercy Corps has decided to partner with Pesito, which is a Danish company, and it's the first company actually that invented, created, tested, adapted a solar electric cooker that actually cancel completely the need for biomass for the cooking needs of the refugees. So I would say that the innovation there is almost threefold, because on one side, definitely we see the technology side of things. So again, like this solar electric cooker, but then we also saw the need for innovative financing behind the model. So with Pesito, we're actually developing a carbon credit instrument that supports reducing the price for end consumers. And finally, the retailer network that we created within the camp, and at the same time, the assembly line that we instituted just outside the settlement. And the assembly line is offering job opportunities for 100 people between refugees and host communities. So the company really believes that we need to localize the knowledge and the expertise where the users actually are. So through this model, we're really trying to tackle the ecosystem around clean cooking from like a all-encompassing perspective. And I think that this was clear. Otherwise, feel free to shoot any question for me.
All right. An innovative business model, just very briefly, that you've seen that you are like, that is great. Business model being an important phrase there.
Yeah, so I think that what is quite interesting is really the sort of shift that we are seeing in the sector. So I think that we are passing probably from like more in-kind distributions.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're using as Mercy Corps, for instance, just after the aftermath of a natural disaster, toward the cash or voucher assistance. This definitely allows refugees or displaced communities in general to be more active, to have more dignity regarding their choices and really identifying a product that is suitable for their needs. To the last model that we are seeing, like sort of developing more and more, even though we're definitely far from nailing it down, which is the partnerships between private sector actors and humanitarian agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I think that Mercy Corps is really pushing forward in the last sphere, because we believe that through partnership with private sector actors, not only we would leverage their expertise and their technology, but also different ways of doing business. So also different ways to financing the humanitarian work that we want to do together.
Thank you, Cecilia. Then we bring in Alexander. Alexander, Cecilia was talking about local. Now we're going to talk about national with you. NDEV and scaling up. Help us understand how you do that and how you're doing that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mimi. Yeah, I'll try to guide you through a couple of points that I also prepared for this session. What you see here now on this slide basically is what we call an energy kiosk in the Rhino camp in Uganda. It was developed a couple of years ago, actually, in 2017, when this was let's say, relatively new business model. So basically, people can go there, they can buy hardware like the clean cook stoves you see here in front, but also smaller Pico-PV systems. And you actually also can use some services like internet access, charging your phone, printing, some cooling devices. So this now actually employs 8 to 10 refugees from that settlement. And it was a bit of a unsure thing. I think in the beginning we started with it. We weren't really sure whether this business model would fly or not. And this, let's say, points again towards the innovation aspect. Has been mentioned by a lot of people already here. But I think if you wanna move forward, and if you wanna move to scale, you cannot rely on the existing instruments that both the development communities and other and private sector actors have been working on so far. So I think for the first, let's say as a first step, you would need a core set of good instruments that you want to implement. So it can be classical TA, it can be innovative financing or a mix of both. You can also, of course, work in identifying new innovative approaches, bringing together public and private sector. We do that, in the Smart Communities Coalition Innovation Fund, for example, where we are supporting new innovative entrepreneurs, basically, out of these refugee camps in building their business case and then also basically starting their own businesses. And so it can be solar-powered hatcheries, it can be kind of e-bicycles, anything I think is helpful currently to raise the ambition, basically. The second thing that we think is very important if you want to go for scale is policies. You cannot do it without enabling policies, basically. And I think the example here of Uganda, and we had the energy deputy minister also joining here today, I think is a very good one. So we are trying to, coordinate on the ground with the local governments, with the national governments, course, supporting them also in the formulation of the Sustainable Energy Response Plan that he was referring to before, also with our other colleagues from ESDS and so with partners on the ground. I think leveraging that conducive policy environment on the ground is really key if you want to go for scale. And I would say the third point, if you want to go for scale, is of course also that you need to bring together the international actors. Now, you know, I'm not the international guy. I'm the, let's say, more the normal person, the normal guy on the ground implementing these projects. But I think it's really helpful now that we see that there's a very strong push from the internationals, from the donor communities, also from the climate and community actually, to come together and really to address this problem. So I think, just to summarize, on the ground, you need a good set of instruments. You need to have a conducive policy environment, and you need to work on that environment also, but you of course also need the international support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Let's push forward and push ahead with Irene Sun. Irene, will you remind people what your job title is again, please?
Yes, I lead the team working on innovative financing at UNHCR.
I love that. I need some innovative financing myself, but that is not what it means. All right, so when you're looking at the market for innovative financing, how big is the market, Irene?
Well, it could support most of the mission that UNHCR has to serve refugees and host communities globally, including on energy, but on many other topics as well. And the reason I say this is that, you know, there's the whole humanitarian aid architecture was founded more than half a century ago. And it was really founded on this conception around humanitarian emergencies, right? That term emergency implies it's a short-term thing. But unfortunately, people are being displaced for decades now. The average length of time that someone is a refugee now is 26 years. Right? And so we've got to support them for that amount of time with real solutions, including energy solutions. And if you go in the real world where, you know, in your city or town or village, wherever you live, the infrastructure that is built there are financed and planned for in a long-term way, right? Not on these short-term humanitarian budgets that we have historically and still, frankly, work with. Right. And so we've got to make that shift in financing in order to build these assets that will benefit communities for the long term, right? Refugees while they're there, but also equally the host communities that are so generously living with and hosting refugees. And so that's why finance has got to be part of the solution. And we've got to start looking at humanitarian infrastructure and financing it in appropriate ways to bring all of this productive assets and technologies to underserved communities globally.
I mean, give us an example of a fund that falls into this category of being innovative.
Sure, and I'll do one better. I'll give you two examples.
Oh, thank you.
So one that we're quite excited about is something UNHCR just launched. It's called Project Flow, and it tackles really the most basic survival need of all humans, which is water. We as UNHCR support hundreds of boreholes that provide life-saving water to refugees and host communities globally. A lot of these are run on diesel to this day. And what we want to do is to be able to not just solarize individual boreholes, right? And we've seen lots of examples of partners through this session, private sector as well, where there's individual projects, but how do we string them together, right? So that the benefits from one flow on to be able to unlock further benefits for the next community and the next community. And the way we do that through Project Flow is that we solarize a borehole, but then we reinvest the savings back into Project Flow, which then can reutilize that to invest in the next borehole being solarized, and then the next one and the next one, right? So that's our pathway to scale, where it's not a one-time, you know, we solarize as many boreholes as we have funding for, but we are able to recycle and utilize the business case to benefit many communities in a domino effect around the world. Another one is called the Green Fund. which is a fund that we've set up internally at UNHCR so that we can live our values in terms of bringing green response across all of our infrastructure. As we've noted through this session, we have a large footprint of offices in remote locations where there's no or very poor grid connectivity, and so we burn diesel, right? And what we want to do through the Green Fund is to be able to de-risk private sector co-investment and to be able to open up commercial opportunities for the private sector to green our offices. So we've set up a guarantee fund where we can issue long-term contracts that are commercially attractive to private sector clean energy companies to be able to bring that technology into these remote locations. Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to say both of these initiatives are open for support. We want people to come in. So whether you're a Clean Energy Challenge member or not, you know, if you're interested in supporting these, we are accepting donations and fundraising. And the faster we get in contributions, the faster we can accelerate the clean energy transition for refugee communities and for our infrastructure around the world. So please get in touch with the organizers if you'd be interested in supporting these initiatives.
Thank you, Irene Sun, really appreciate you. All right, Thomas, you and I have 3 minutes to do this in. I have seen you making notes during the conversation. What is on your notepad and next steps?
I'm wondering how to capture all these ideas and thoughts into
the panel's great, Thomas.
Yeah, exactly.
I love this panel.
Nothing else expected with these panelists. What I'm seeing is sort of a long-term, a medium-term, and a short-term action package here. And the long-term, we heard this before from Mansour very well. We need to really work on SDG 7. This is our goal. This is our milestone. We have 9 more years to achieve this big goal, and we need all the help. And just to give you a tiny example, the wonderful program we heard today from Uganda, it took 2 years and a larger amount of people and also, of course, other resources to develop these programs. But we need more of these. So we need one of these in every country, every biggest nation hosting, refugee hosting country. And in the medium term, I think the biggest challenges and the biggest goal we need to work on is really the cooking topic. It is unacceptable that people need to sell food in order to buy firewood to cook their next meal. This is something fundamentally wrong here, and this needs to change. And I think we have a couple of good examples. We heard a couple of good examples of new technologies, electricity, solar cooking, LPG, gas cooking. So there are innovative solutions out there. Now it's back to also get some extra finance into this and find business models that actually work in the sector. And on the short term, let me be a little bit provocative here. I think we need to stop burning money tomorrow. And what I mean with that is, we heard about it a couple of times now. The UN is running. We've done our little survey before this meeting, and we found out from our partner organizations that the UN is running more than 10,000 diesel generators in the humanitarian system alone every day. So there's money wasted, and there are emissions, CO2 emitted, which are not necessary, because we have the technology to change this, to solarize these diesel-powered infrastructure. As Irene said, we need to bundle this. We need to have a smart way to do this. There's definitely also a way to include the private sector into this space, because there is a business case here for them. And it's really on us to make this happen. And as Irene said, this is not something the humanitarian sector can do alone. They're not set up. We are not set up as an energy developer. We are set up to save lives in an emergency. So that's why I'm encouraging all the partners to step up, to become a member of the challenge, and we will get back to many of you in the next couple of days with a call to action, with a document that you would like to share with you, and hopefully you can sign up for that.
Thomas, do you remember that video that was right at the beginning of our program? Are you ready for the challenge? After 2 panels, audience, how can you not be ready? I know you're ready.
Exactly. I think
thank you so much.
Many more people now ready for this.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. We help prepare you. We help get you there.
Thank you.
All right. Your MC today is Andrew Harper. Andrew is the UNHCR Special Advisor on Climate Action. Andrew, I'm handing back to you.
Okay, Femi, and thank you so much for your expertise, enthusiasm, and encouragement for what is really such an important challenge for all of us. So thank you. So now we're moving on to the next session, and this is where sort of the rubber hits the road, where we've got the engagement of and commitments of 7 of our key partners. And I'd like to start off by welcoming His Excellency Ambassador Zenebe Kabebe Korcho, who is the Ambassador for the Mission of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia to the United Nations. We've got a total of 7 speakers, so each one of our speakers will just make a short intervention and statement about their contributions. We're limiting this to 90 seconds, so I'll try and do as almost as good a job as Femi in moderating. So over to you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, but now I think it's okay. But
yeah, no, it's great. So if you can make a short intervention on behalf of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, please go ahead, Your Excellency.
Okay. Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all thank the Secretariat of the Clean Energy Challenge for organizing this meeting to share our views on clean and safe energy in refugee settings, moving forward on the Clean Energy Challenge. As you know, my country, Ethiopia, has taken bold leadership on climate action by launching its ambitious climate resilient green economy strategy, aspiring to build a carbon neutral and resilient economy by 2030, which aligns with the Clean Energy Challenge. It has also intensified its commitment against climate change by launching a Green Legacy national flagship initiative in 2019, aimed at planting 20 billion trees, seedlings, within 4 years. In this regard, more than 9 billion seedlings have been planted over the last 2 years, and arrangements are in place to plant 6 billion seedlings this year under the theme of Let's Adorn Ethiopia. This project was launched 2 weeks ago. I would like to inform you that refugees, host communities, as well as partners working in Ethiopia have taken part in the Prime Minister Abiy's Bold Green Legacy initiative. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ethiopia provides protection to nearly 1 million refugees that are hosted in 26 camps and non-camp locations all over Ethiopia. The host communities share their scarce resources with these refugees. For example, access to clean energy in host communities is still very low. And the presence of refugees has increased pressure on the local environment, since refugees cut down trees, grass, and collect for firewood, cooking, or heating. As a result, the environment degradation also is beginning to affect the peaceful coexistence between refugees and host communities.
Very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We're unfortunately having to limit this to 90 seconds per intervention. But I'd now like to pass on to the Special Representative for Energy, Climate and Food Security from the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Hans Olav Ibrecht. Thank you.
much, Andrew, and let me first congratulate you with the progress made on the Clean Energy Challenge, to which Norway is pleased to be a partner. And as we know, 2021 will be a make or break year for climate and energy action. Energy access in refugee settings is well below SDG 7 targets, and it may slip out of reach if we do not act immediately. So let me offer some suggestions how to take action. First, the energy needs of displaced and conflict-affected communities need to be integrated into global, national, and local policies. Second, we need to focus on mechanisms to unlock private sector investments. Multi-year planning and budget cycles are key, and the partnership between Cube Energy and IOM to transition one of their hubs in South Sudan from diesel generators to solar is a good example of innovation. Third, we need to overcome silos and develop comprehensive solutions. We need more renewable energy expertise, also within humanitarian agencies. The Norwegian-supported NORCAP program strengthened partners' capacity to provide clean energy services to vulnerable populations and humanitarian operations. And underpinning this, we need better data and advocacy, and we are proud to support the global platform of action. We welcome the call to action. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Hans, for staying on time. Now I'd like to pass over to the Chargé d'Affaires of the US mission to the UN and other international organizations, Mr. Benjamin Molling. Welcome, Ben. Over.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you for convening this meeting today. It's been interesting and inspiring to hear more about what we can do collectively to bring clean energy to displaced populations. As you've seen, the Biden administration has demonstrated that the United States is committed to climate action, and we are raising our ambition to combat the climate crisis, which is an important element of that is access to clean energy. On April 22nd and 23rd, President Biden hosted the Virtual Leaders Summit on Climate. At the summit, the United States and other countries announced our plans for enhanced climate ambition. Our commitments include transforming energy systems, promoting innovation to bring clean technologies to scale, and providing urgent support for vulnerable countries to adapt and build resilience in the face of climate crisis. All of those elements that align well with the ambitions of the Clean Energy Challenge. The United States is also committed to engaging the private sector in development and humanitarian contexts, another element that aligns with the CEC. We are pleased that the Smart Communities Coalition, an initiative we might add is co-founded by USAID and MasterCard, is updating its pledges to better improve outcomes for displaced populations in host communities. We appreciate hearing today about the efforts made to date by a variety of actors, humanitarian and development, public and private sector, under the CEC, and we will look for opportunities to work together in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benjamin Molling, the Chargé d'Affaires of the US mission. Next, another great supporter of UNHCR and of refugees, Germany, Mr. Gregor Schotten, the Council of Political Department, Permanent Mission of Germany. Over to you, Gregor.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you very much for inviting us for this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, Germany promotes a holistic, multi-stakeholder approach, providing sustainable, clean, and efficient energy solutions for both refugees and host communities, as well as for the humanitarian infrastructure. We encourage partners to include displaced population in national policies and to implement innovative projects in displacement and host community settings. Germany is supporting the Clean Energy Challenge through its different energy access development programs. The Energizing Development Program, with its various activities in displacement settings, and the project Energy Solutions for Displacement Settings, working closely with UNHCR in Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia, integrated in the global program supporting UNHCR implementing the GCR. Germany is also supporting the innovative UNHCR Green Fund, a guarantee mechanism that will allow UNHCR to contract renewable energy providers for 10 UNHCR sites located in Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and other countries. We also plan to support the UNHCR Float Fund, a finance mechanism to solarize boreholes for displaced and host communities. Germany also co-funded the UNITAR Global Plan of Action, which for the first time systematically connected humanitarian assistance and renewable energy in displacement situations. The GPA recommendations were inputs to the Global Compact on Refugees and hence an important contribution to the achievement of SDG 7. As a follow-up, we also supported a pilot project at one of the UNHCR's camps in Djibouti. To conclude, Germany believes that this is a very important topic. Let me congratulate the team of the Clean Energy Challenge for their tireless efforts in promoting this important and ecologically and economically logical goal. The German government will continue to support you in these valuable endeavors. Thank you very much.
Perfect, Gregor, and thank you again for the support from the people and government of Germany. Now to Mrs. Veronica Nordlund, First Secretary of Humanitarian Affairs from the Swedish Mission in Geneva. Hi, Veronica.
Important event. It's been really inspiring to hear so much concrete action and innovation taking place. Now, access to clean energy is linked to achievements in so many other areas, such as protection, gender, health. It's an area strongly prioritized by Sweden, and this was reflected in the pledges that we made at the Global Refugee Forum. Together with partners such as UNHCR, we are supporting new approaches and innovative financial methods to ensure clean energy in humanitarian response in several different contexts. A few quick examples. One example, again, as mentioned earlier, is our financing of the Green Fund, an innovative financial mechanism operated by UNHCR with the aim of reducing the risk and the barriers for private actors to invest in energy solutions in the administrative sectors of refugee camps. On the same theme, we're currently conducting a study aimed at exploring the possibility of using refugee camps as anchor customers for electrification. The idea is to create economic incentives for suppliers to strengthen their local market presence, thus contributing to the electrification both of the actual camps as well as the surrounding host communities. Another example is SIDA's funding of the pilot phase of a program aimed at identifying and scaling up the use of functional, energy-efficient cooking solutions in Chad. While the short-term results of this program will be specific to Chad, it's our hope that its methodologies will be further developed and applied more broadly to other contexts. So, to sum up, we believe it's important that projects in this field are catalytical and contribute to learning in the sector, but also that they do not stay individual projects. We hope that the projects that we finance can be scaled up so that many more can benefit from clean energy. Ultimately, we wish to inspire strong commitment and future investment, and I think today's event has contributed greatly towards this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronica. And over to Javier Donoli, who's the Senior Vice President of Sustainable Development from Schneider Electric.
Thank you very much. So first, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share Schneider Electric's experience in the field of access to energy through public-private partnership. The purpose of our company is to empower all the users of energy and resources, bridging progress and sustainability for everyone. We believe strongly that access to energy and digital is a basic human right, and that displaced people should not be excluded. We also understand that tackling energy poverty is key to alleviate multidimensional poverty. We started our Access to Energy social program back in 2009, and we have tried to harness our expertise in the field of energy management and our R&D capabilities to develop innovative and reliable solutions for the most communities. And in total, we have covered roughly 30 million people in many countries in South Asia and Africa mostly to gain green energy access. As part of our sustainability commitments, our ambition is to bring this green energy to 50 million people by 2030. Back in 2018, we signed an agreement and a strategic MOU between our CEO, Mr. Grégoire, and the High Commissioner UNHCR in order to enable the access in the 3 years to provide access to electricity for 2 million refugees in 40 different countries. For the future, we aim at strengthening our existing partnership, of course, and to extend our long-term agreements to a broader perspective like solar home systems, solar microgrids, solar street lights, basically everything solar to power the needs of these communities. We also work better at managing the recyclability at the end of the life of the products, retrofitting to the creation of training centers inside the camps. We finally see that access to energy for collective use, not only for single access, together with suitable business models, will trigger entrepreneurship among refugee communities inside and outside the camps. Thank you very much for your attention, and we look forward to further cooperation.
Thank you very much, Xavier. And over to one of our, certainly one of my favorite partners, because when I was the representative in Jordan, the first large-scale implementation, which really demonstrated the empowerment of refugees and moving them from dependency to enhanced dignity, was sponsored by IKEA Foundation. So, and Mieke de Jong, who is the head of Portfolio Refugees and Livelihoods from IKEA Foundation, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks everyone. I'm delighted to say a few words on behalf of IKEA Foundation. And so, right, we invest in programs that help people afford a better everyday life and that protect the planet. And we've got great learnings from both our refugee and our energy programs, but we also know that we're barely meeting needs. And as the founder of IKEA, the late Mr. Ingvar Kamprad, has said, a lot remains to be done. And so to that end, just sharing a few thoughts with you, I think first we can do a bit more to pivot that humanitarian presence for the good of energy, right? Really have it serve as an anchor load that we could need to power a local, more rural economy or revitalize a city, so we can invest in those value chains in that market, really build, healthy living spaces and help that local community to thrive and more comfortably host and enable refugee communities coming in. And also embrace that these are the future sectors of work, offering income and business opportunities, really helping us to transition to that new green economy. And to do that, it's important that agencies and organizations capture that footprint, collect the energy data, show true costs, so that conversations with donors can shift to see where that pivot to renewable energy, but also better fitting financial models can be made. Then also energy poverty is real, and though we see progress, we still need to put more funding also behind generating evidence and data. We've heard that before as well. That's crucial so we can scale the right things. So we've been doing that too. We've been using our philanthropic funding and delivering on more of this energy evidence, and really encourage others to do the same if you can. Last but not least, of course, we need to keep putting people at the center when we develop energy interventions. And it's regardless of the scale that we're designing for, it needs to continue to make sense for people and for businesses in how we use energy, and to ensure really it's that productive asset that contributes. And that's also what we've been trying to do. We remain committed to renewable energy, we remain committed to refugees, and really complement the effort today in the energy challenge in keeping us moving forward. So for us, it's very much income's up, calm down. Thank you very much, and back to you, Andrew. Thank you.
And again, thank you very much, and thanks to all our panelists. One person that I'd also like to have very much engaged is Jaime. Come over here. So Jaime was behind the camera, but he needs to be in front of the camera, because Jaime has been driving this process within UNHCR for a number of years. So we wouldn't be here without him, and Thomas from GPA, very much engaged. So well, let's put this in perspective. Let's wrap this up as well. I think we're pretty much on time, but just bear with us for a couple more minutes, where there's recognition that there's huge needs out there. But at the same time, we're in a situation where we've got possibilities which we've never had before. There's increasing recognition of the dire needs of this planet, as well as the needs of populations who are the most vulnerable to climate change. At the same time, there is technology out there which didn't exist 10, 20 or 30 years ago. It's never been cheaper. It's never been more available. So what is actually limiting us from meeting this objective? Is it ambition? Is it collaboration? Is it access? I think if we go through each one of these areas, we can address each one of those challenges, but we can only do it together. And whether it be from communities on the ground, whether it be from NGOs, private sector, governments, we have to be working together. It's not just an issue of reducing emissions, it's the issue of empowering populations and making productive communities better off. We're 1.5 years into this project. It's going to go well after 2030 because population is going to be increasing need. But I'm extremely confident that if we take this seriously, we can make a difference. There's a number of elements which are coming up, which benchmarks which we can look at, not only COP26. But in September, there's a UN high-level dialogue on energy. We have to be doing what we're just doing there at the very end, talking about impact, talking about concrete projects. There's also at the end of the year, which is a follow-up to the Global Refugee Forum, there's a high-level officials meeting, which will be hosted by UNHCR, where energy will be a key element. We obviously need all your support. We need the support of your friends, other business partners, because we've got no choice then to make this work, not only for the planet, but for the people that we've been mandated and we've got a responsibility to protect and assist, but also to those communities who have got expectations that we will make a difference. I know that when I was certainly in the field, I wouldn't sleep well at night knowing that people were cold or in the dark. And I think this is one thing which we all have to experience. We need to put ourselves in the position of somebody who does not have the access to the benefits of what we have. So one thing which I've also been asked to say is that there is a website which should be on the chat, which GPA have hopefully put onto the chat, where you can get additional information and access. We will be continuing to drive forward on this. Also hold us accountable, hold each one of us accountable, because talking is not sufficient when people's lives are at risk, and we can make that difference. So thank you again for everyone for joining us. Thanks for everyone who's been dealing with the technology and the backup and making this work. I know it's not so easy. Femi has left, but I certainly appreciate her for moderating. And again, Jaime, Thomas, and all our supporters. Thank you. Over.